Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there friends, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. And today in the Bible Bistro we're going to be looking at Psalm 52. Actually all this week, it's 9 verses, Psalm 52, and there's a heavy dose of history here in the introduction, and so we're going to pick up here with the introduction today, look at the background of the psalm, and then we'll comment on the psalm all week. The background is about Doeg the Edomite, so if you have your Bible, you probably want to turn to 1 Samuel 22, in addition to having your Bible open here to Psalm 52, because in 1 Samuel 22, we have the story of Doeg the Edomite. Now, I'm going to call this psalm the Lesson of Doeg because it's very important what David's trying to teach us here, and he actually tells us that this is a maskil. So this is a psalm that we're to learn something from. So the introduction has, of the choir master, a maskil of David, when Doeg the Edomite came and reported to Saul and said to him, David came to the house of Ahimelech. This goes back to 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 9 through 19. So if you have your Bible and you want to turn over there, let's just go there real quick so we can get our background passage here. And this is going to tell us exactly what's going on. David in chapter 21 had come to Ahimelech the priest, and Ahimelech had given him the showbread. In verses 1 through 9, David takes the showbread and gives it to his men. Ahimelech also inquires of the Lord for him and gives him Goliath's sword, which he had there in the tabernacle. So all this happens, but while it's taking place, Doeg the Edomite happens to be there at the tabernacle. So he sees all this happen. Now in chapter 22, beginning in verse 9, Saul's complaining because nobody will help him. He says everybody's against him. He's having a little pity party there in verses 7 and 8. And then in verse 9, Doeg the Edomite speaks up, and he says, I saw the son of Jesse come to Nob to Ahimelech the son of Ahitub. And he inquired of the Lord for him and gave him victuals and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. So Doeg rats out David. I guess that's one way we could say it. He rats him out. He tells on him. And then when the king calls for Ahimelech and all his father's house to come and appear before him, they do. And the king says to one of the footmen, or to the footmen that are there around him, slay the priest, but they won't do it. And Doeg does. In verse 18, the king says to Doeg, turn thou and fall upon the priest. And Doeg the Edomite turned and fell on the priests and slew that day 45 persons that did wear a linen ephod. So Doeg does this. He tells on David, and he slays the priest. So David writes this psalm about what I'm going to call the lesson of Doeg. So let me read for us today verse 1. Why boastest thou thyself in mischief, O mighty man? The goodness of God endures continually. So when he says the goodness of God endures continually, that's a key for us because that's going to be what we begin the psalm with and what we end the psalm with. The goodness of God. And it reaches back into Psalm 51 in verse 18 of Psalm 51. And there we remember that the psalmist said, do good in thy good pleasure to Zion. Build thou the walls of Jerusalem. God is the one who can do good. He's the only one that can do good. And so the goodness of God, they're waiting on the goodness of God, and that's a theme. It's one of the threads throughout this piece, because Doeg is not going to act good, and we're going to find out about that beginning tomorrow. So this is the lesson of Doeg the Edomite, and David asked the question, why do you boast yourself? See, Doeg thought he was somebody. And he thought he was a pretty important fella because he was able to rat out David. Well, we're going to find out about his wicked tongue and more the remainder of the week. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow as we look at verses 2 and 3. Hear, on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.